parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. I said in this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. You make this parade a mere charade if you're marching just for fun. Our troops must feel your thanks for real before the marching is done. They know side by side you can match their stride to the drum beat and the brass, but they're not impressed with you unless you can match their stride in class. This may not sound too diplomatic, but I cannot be more emphatic when I tell you it's problematic when you do less than your best, especially when it's because you put your brilliance on pause for the mere peer applause it draws from a so-called friend doing less. Quit playing. I'm saying, we know that you are great, and you know it, so show it. Don't make our heroes wait. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. For those of you who already do the things that make us proud, your nation in appreciation says thanks to you out loud. Your schoolmates should imitate the way you tap your potential. Let me try to convince them why their effort is essential. Our men and women in uniform before, during, and after Desert Storm always perform above the norm everywhere and anywhere on the planet. Your peers should follow our heroes' lead, but they cannot follow if they cannot read. Allow me, please, to plant this seed. Don't take freedom for granted. I'm serious, I'm furious to see U.S. schools behind. No excuses, all we gotta do is just make up our minds. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. We believe in you, warriors protect you too. Do what you must to rise. So please do your part and please start before another warrior dies. In this parade, please wave your grades at the brave who fight for you. If you don't gain, they fight in vain. Show them what you can do. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. They sacrifice for you. Show them what you can do. Please show them what you can do. Please.
Good afternoon, Kansas City. Welcome to Wave Your Grades right here on KUAW.org. I hope you liked our live intro today.
Thank you.
We are coming to you right here on KUAW.org. This is the Academic Patriotism Program that is dedicated to veterans and serious secondary scholars. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now here is our host, civilian urban educator, Carl Boyd.
Thank you so very, very much. Not only announcer DeQuay Wilson, but producer and engineer. And she is the one who gets us on every Saturday, even our live introduction today. We have a very special program today, very special guest. And for our very special guest, this program allows veterans to motivate students and students to report to veterans their academic achievement and their excellence. And we attempt in all that we do to suggest that there is a climate where young people matriculate, whether in school or the community, that is conducive to learning and conducive to progress. DeQuay Wilson, what better guest than Karen Slaughter with the Center for Conflict Resolution, who can help our young people to understand how what they do together makes a big difference to what we are attempting to do. On this program, Saturday, March 11th, Karen Slaughter, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so very much for inviting me, and I loved the introduction.
Oh, that is kind of you. Thank you very, very much. And my prayer is that it does make sense as it relates to motivating students to strive for excellence in honor of our troops, but also in honor of those who are in leadership attempting to help them. And we would like for Karen Slaughter to start us out by talking about the Center for Conflict Resolution and why you feel that that is important to our young people in this time.
Absolutely. So the Center for Conflict Resolution is a restorative justice mediating organization that's been around about 20 years. It started out in Independence, Missouri, and then moved to the Location 1 building on 63rd Street, and now sits in the building at 6285 Paseo. And we're growing, so we'll probably be moving soon, probably in the next year or so. But what we do is try to pass along an understanding of the restorative processes that were found in indigenous villages and countries. So restorative looks at what it is that caused an individual to create harm, who was harmed, and how best to correct that harm by sitting down with not only the harmer, but the person that was harmed and the community. And in those organizations or indigenous settings, people weren't put out of their community because they were needed. So it was about how do we correct the harm and still allow us to get along and to be able to work together so the production that needed in our community continues, right? And so the reason that I even got close to this organization was because I found myself in a situation in my prior employment where I felt as though there were things being said and or done, and while I didn't believe everything that was being said or done was right, I thought we can get together and talk through this, we work together, we can talk through this.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, I couldn't see a way to help us get to that point, and I left the company. And I got engaged with the Center for Conflict Resolution first as a board member or a community member for what's called a Neighborhood Accountability Board. And Neighborhood Accountability Board is a project or a program that our prosecuting attorneys buy into, in which they believe the people who have caused harm would be better served by visiting with the community and understanding their effect on the community, but also having the community understand what's going on with that individual and seeing how we as a community could support both the harmer and the person that was harmed. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I'm out of money, but I need food, and I won't get money for another 15 days or so. So I decide that I'm going to go into the Sunfresh, and I'm going to steal something to eat. And I'm caught. When I'm caught, if I share with you that I didn't have any other resources, I didn't know anything else to do, I'm sorry I hurt the community by stealing, but I didn't know what else to do. And so the community's listening, and the community may say, do you know that the Morning Star Church does a pantry every Wednesday? Do you know that you can get food through these agencies? Oh, you're a senior? There's Meals on Wheels that'll help you get to the end of the month. And in doing that, it helps that individual not only understand how they can make it to the end of the month with their food, but it also allows them an opportunity to be accountable for their actions, apologize to the community and the store, and in some cases, if they need to, make financial restitution over a period of time, if they feel comfortable with that.
This is very interesting to me, and by the way, KUAW, as usual, jump in. We have heard the cliche, hurt people, and we attempt to help our young people understand that. And when you talk about restorative justice, and as a matter of fact, I am familiar with second chance programs and a number of ways that we reach out to those who feel harmed for whatever reason. One of the things that we shall talk about, because you are teaching me, I wasn't expecting that to go back for 30 years, but you're teaching me, you will help me to understand how the victim, as well as the victimizer, is also restored. How do you address both?
So, when there is a harm caused and I get a case, I will reach out to a person only after the victimizer decides that, yes, I'd like to participate, I want to be accountable. Then I'll reach out to the victim and I'll say to them, what is it that you need? How can we make you whole again, right? And sometimes that victim does not want to have anything to do with the victimizer, but does have a message they want to deliver. If there is a message, I'll deliver that while we're speaking to the victimizer. But if the victim would like to sit across from the victimizer and explain the impact that's had, as long as neither is going to be reoffended or negatively affected by that contact, we make sure that happens. And I can promise you there have been cases where people started out on opposite ends of the table, and in the end they're sending us pictures of how they have met and how they are now friends with one another and how they have made it. There are videos online. One in particular is a Tinkerbell, and a person's car was stolen, and she sat down with the person that stole the car, who happened to be a young man, and it was quite obvious that young man had stolen many cars, didn't even remember hers. And when she found out he was an artist, or art interested him, his mother said, you can't pay this lady back $4,000 with art. And the lady said, but yeah, he can. I'd like a Tinkerbell, about 5 feet tall, painted, and it has to be a specific Tinkerbell so that it didn't have too much cleavage in it. And, you know, she had a specific idea of what this should look like. And the young man worked and earned the money. He created the painting, and he installed it in her home. So she received what she really wanted, which was that painting. And he received the accountability and the restoration of being back in the community and in good graces. Had that case gone to court, it would have been very much different. In fact, the courts would never ask her, what is it that you need to make you whole, you know?
Now, interestingly enough, I am an educator, as you know. And I started teaching 7th and 8th grade in 1964, south side of Chicago.
Okay.
And all of these years, when I hear the term conflict resolution, I immediately think about 2 8th grade classmates who had a beef somehow, and we got them together to resolve their conflict. The Center for Conflict Resolution is not quite that shallow in terms of age and in terms of cases. So as it relates to a range, both a range in terms of the types of situations with which you deal, and range as it relates to age, who do you work with and what do you work with?
So we work with a wide range of individuals. Typically where the school settings is concerned, we are in middle school to high school.
Yes.
And then we are also engaged in the justice system. So what is the Transition Center of Kansas City, which is kind of a minimal facility, has gone through a transformation. And that transformation is set up so that the residents there, and they're not considered convicts, they're considered residents, are actually receiving a wide range of training, which includes conflict resolution workshop skills, circle trainings, also includes yoga, it includes financial literacy, it includes job training, and multiple services that will help those individuals when they move out of that center to be more prepared to survive, have more opportunities in terms of who they can connect with to get to the things they need, and have a better chance of successfully going forward without going back, you know. And then when it comes to the community, a lot of my efforts over the past couple of years have been in the landlord-tenant space, mediating landlord-tenant cases so that individuals could find themselves back to either being able to move in a reasonable amount of time, repaying their landlord, and being able to stay. Because you see, those, even though that's a contract, that's a relationship most times between individuals, and their trust has been broken when the rent wasn't paid and the promises were made and not kept. But when we're able to sit people down and get people to talk with one another,
Yes.
then they recognize that we're all human, you know?
Now, typically, does someone reach out to you, or does your agency discover that there is a need and you reach out? And of course, the follow-up to that is, will you please give us contact information?
Absolutely. So, yes, people reach out to us, and that's one of the reasons that I enjoy this. It really says that you are taking ownership or accountability of whatever's going on in your life. We do occasionally get the cases that are referred to us by the courts or by the police department because they visited and they're neighbors with an issue. Our contact information is 816-461-8255, and that's our phone number. Our website is www.ccrkc.org,
Okay.
and you can reach us either way.
You said 461-8255.
Yes, sir.
And you said CCR?
Yes, sir. ccrkc.org.
All right. Now, I'm sorry.
Well, you actually asked the first two questions that I wanted to ask, but is there a fee for your service? So for an individual that just seeks out your service, is there a fee?
So we have a lot of opportunity to service residents through combat grants. So we have 5 striving hubs in Kansas City where they've been identified as kind of hot spots. So when there are things happening in those areas and they are referred to us, those are pretty much covered. If you have, if you're not in those areas, then we also have a fee-based service, but we also have a sliding scale. So if you can't really afford it, we can get it down to 0 a lot of times.
Now, I was fortunate to be a part of your presentation Thursday morning with Common Ground, or is that KC360?
KC360.
KC360. Tell me a little bit about your relationship to KC360 and what the objectives are therein.
Sure. So, Center for Conflict Resolution is just one of many groups that have joined that organization in an effort to reduce violence. We weekly discuss what is happening in our city, and it's a program that's being modeled after Omaha 360,
Yes.
who at one time had a very high crime rate, very high rate of killings. And so they've been able, through their process, to reduce their killings to a very mere or a very small amount.
Exactly.
And so the KC360 group is hoping to model that organization, understanding that Kansas City is different from Omaha, but also looking for what are the best practices. So that room contains a number of individual agencies and a number of individuals. I refer to that as an all-star team.
Okay. Now, let me remind those who are with us that this is Wave Your Grades on KUAW.org, coming to you live from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center in Kansas City, Missouri. Our blessing on this day is to have as our very special guest Karen Slaughter, representing the Center for Conflict Resolution. And to my surprise today, going all the way back 30 years, as it relates to the types of services that you bring us. Over time, as this has evolved, have you found a need to attack cases that 30 years ago you might not have seen? Are there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is a disconnect occurring right now. It's a disconnect within families, within neighborhoods, within communities, and a disconnect between communities and policing. And the cases that we see are sometimes very painful when you get right down to what's going on. everything we do, of course, is confidential, but when we talk to people and we understand the hurt, you said this earlier, hurt people, you know? And so getting down to what it is that a person needs and how we can transform or get them to see life a little bit differently. It's work that's difficult, and sometimes you have to disassociate yourself and calm yourself because
Wow.
you're taking this journey with those individuals as you're understanding what that pain is. But it is the most rewarding work I have ever done in my life.
Wow.
I,
Now, please.
I could imagine that there are some conflicts that cannot be resolved, but would you say that most of the cases that you encounter, that your success rate is higher than opposed to the cases that can't be resolved?
I would. I am not a member of our school team. We work in approximately 10 schools in the Kansas City area.
Okay.
And there are several different lessons that are taught in those schools. One is discipline that restores, because unfortunately in the schools where minorities attend, suspending students is something that happens more frequently than it does in other schools. And our students aren't learning anything when they're not in the school. They're out and they're more apt to get in trouble when there's no one there to protect them and or to watch after them. And when I listen to my colleagues that are in the schools, I'm so very proud of them, because oftentimes the pain of that student is transferred onto them before they ever have an opportunity to reach that young person, you know. And there have been opportunities for them to bring students together, as you described, getting two eighth graders together.
Yeah.
There have been opportunities for them to bring students together. But then one of the things they recognize is what they're teaching that child may differ completely from what the child is learning at home. For instance, mom and dad may say, "You better fight."
Absolutely.
And so how does a child understand the culture at home, live with the culture at home, but still accept what we're trying to impress upon them about you don't have to choose to fight. There
So
are
how
other
do
ways
you
to go.
answer the question that you just asked?
That I just posed. It's a lot of work. No.
Yes.
You know, here's the deal. One thing, several things that we teach, and the first one being is, as a human, we are inherently born with dignity. And see, sometimes people confuse dignity with respect. I can disrespect you, but I can't undignify you, right?
Okay.
You can act in an undignified manner, but that has nothing to do with what I can do to you. So we start there. You are entitled to certain things. And we want to be sure that you know that as a young person,
Yes.
right? But not only are you entitled, so is that other child that you are having the conflict with, right? And we talk about the things that cause you to trigger. What is it that upsets you? You know, you and I are adults. It might be a person cutting us off in traffic on the way to work can change the whole, trajectory of our day, But when we talk to these students and we find out what they're really dealing with, them recognizing that they have a safe place to come and talk about what's bothering them and what's going on in their lives is the first step toward getting them to see that there is a different opportunity out there.
Now, let me say, DeQuay, unless you have something right now, that you caused me to think about two things, and here is one. Over the time that you have spent, is there something that might be referred to as, quote, a more typical case than other cases? Generally, you are finding that you need more people to address this particular issue than other issues.
So I'd have to speak from the community perspective because that's where my work is. And what I find within the community aspect is there's a great deal of theft is probably the theft and disorderly conduct are the
Okay.
cases that are referred to us the most. And a lot of times we find that those people who are stealing have found themselves at a point where I don't have the funds. I just don't have the funds. And for whatever reason, they believe Walmart has deep pockets, so that's a place we can go, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they don't recognize the impact
Okay.
that can have on their whole community, right? There used to be a super Walmart out on Bannister. When it closed as a result of the shrinkage, and it affected the entire community around it, you know, closing out jobs and other retailers. So,
Now, do you accept contributions, and how would that be properly done?
absolutely. Again, on our website, www.ccrkc.org, there is an opportunity to make a donation. And then once a year in the month of October, we have what we call a Rise for Peace breakfast. And there you get an opportunity to meet some of the people that we worked with and talk with us and have a great breakfast in addition.
I had mentioned to you that you made me think of two things. One, something that might be referred to as a, quote, typical case, unquote. The second is, have you found that there are, for lack of a better term, alumni, as it were, that there are people who come to you who have had the conflict resolution experience, who have come back to recount or maybe even to volunteer or work with you?
Both.
Is that right?
Absolutely. One of the first cases I worked on, and I can speak about it, although everything else is confidential. I can speak on this one because it was written about by Kate Brubaker, a former prosecutor in Kansas City. She's now on the Kansas City, Kansas side. But there was a gentleman who was having a difficult time with his children's mother. And she basically said, I'm not going to let you see the kids, which caused him to go down the path of drinking. And he wound up assaulting someone who didn't really deserve it, you know. And the person he assaulted felt like he had done some things that were wrong in his life and had been given a second chance, so he wanted to give this person a second chance. And quite frankly, had he not, this individual would have had to serve time. And the individual was very remorseful, extremely remorseful about having done that. And so when we listened to the stories on both sides, it was very heartfelt, very warming. We've had other people who have gone through the cases or through our classes. We teach a Rethink Conflict class that's typically for people that are on probation and parole. Those individuals say, I'd like to come back. I want to just bring somebody with me. Can I come take a class with you, you know?
Yes.
And that's a service that's being offered for free. We also have, I mentioned earlier, neighborhood accountability boards. That's a training that we offer for free. And because we do those primarily over Zoom, we have people who have attended a session, and they've been in Colorado, Mexico, et cetera, et cetera. But these are community members that
Yes.
were once from Kansas City and have received the training, and they just want to continue to provide that support.
Now, Karen Slaughter,
Yes, sir.
Center for Conflict Resolution, is a particular entity. Do you find that in Kansas City and beyond for that matter, but we are in the greater Kansas City area, that organizations are seeking to create peace in our community and other positive ends are good about working together, or is there a competitive edge that keeps us from doing as much together as we should?
I think there is a competitive edge, and partly because many of those organizations like ours rely on funding.
Yes.
And we're all seeking funding from some of the same places.
Exactly.
And what happens when that occurs is we're competitive for those dollars. And maybe I won't tell you everything I know, so that when I apply for the funding,
yes,
I have a
absolutely.
leg up, you know.
Oh, no, absolutely. And unfortunately, that is something that can be expected. So when you look at a 360 coming together once every week, is one of those objectives when those meetings are being held to get like-minded organizations together to be less competitive as it relates to vying for funds, maybe more competitive in terms of positive results, And how can we do that as a community and not feel that it takes something away from me?
Well, so I'm very encouraged by a resolution that was actually, I guess, authored by Councilwoman Park Shaw, but also signed on to by at least 9 other city council members
Yes.
to effectuate what called as the Kansas City Blueprint. And that blueprint was identified years ago as a process for identifying, organizing, and serving in a way that would reduce conflict and crime. And so the process right now is estimated to cost about $30 million, and the council has agreed to put forth $6 million per year for the next 5 years
Yes.
in a way that allows those funds to be used in many of the same organizations that are attending the KC 360 meetings, so that it can further the work that those organizations are doing. If everything goes as planned, that competitiveness is going to diminish because there won't be that need, you know.
Now, this is the Center for Conflict Resolution. When you and I say that on 31st and Cypress in Kansas City, Missouri, what is your reach? And how many such entities, if you know, across the nation exist?
So our reach is actually all over Jackson County.
Okay.
We actually do some work in Platte County. And in terms of the number of organizations across the country, probably not as many as we need, but it's growing.
Okay.
It's growing.
Okay.
Like I said, there are restorative justice programs and projects in California. They really work hard in those areas so that they can get the students right and make sure that they have a process to re-enter the schools and go back to being a student, not the kid that's got to support the family, you know. There are also in the east area of the country, there are some, like the Eastern Mennonite University is
Wow.
someplace that trains and provides a master's education in restorative justice. So,
In education,
yes.
there is a concept that has been used, and again, I started on the south side of Chicago in 1964, and in working with educators over the years, there is a concept, and we refer to it as, quote, the cultural deficit model, unquote. And this model finds educators approaching certain students with an expectation of there being a problem. The cultural deficit is, if you are a young person, black, living in the inner city, I have to start my relationship fixing what's wrong with you rather than appreciating what's right with you. Do you find that you have to combat that often, or are you able to present the positive right up front?
Interestingly enough, I think maybe 3 years ago, there wasn't as much of a buy-in in the school system to actually address a student for who that student is. And as I mentioned, we're in about 10 schools this year, but we've been in others. And what's being taught is discipline that restores rather than alienates.
Come on.
And then there's the restorative process specialist lessons that are being given to the teachers and to the students. Mm-hmm. And then we have that conflict resolution workshop that we do with students. And we've actually started taking that out into neighborhoods. So if a neighborhood has a youth group that it supports and it wants to help in that way, we'll bring that to the community and actually work with the students there.
This is so good. And the reason it is so good is because I'm asking the question about possible competition.
Mm-hmm.
But the Center for Conflict Resolution is in a position to work with any number of organizations. And as you work with them, they are enhanced by what you do. So for you to create some positive orientation for groups helps them, but it doesn't take anything away from you.
Absolutely.
It's why you exist.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my prayer, and I often ask this question of guests, our very special guest, Karen Slaughter, Center for Conflict Resolution, is one, appealing to you personally. And as you look at the landscape where we are in this time, are you seriously optimistic? Do you reserve some of your optimism? How would you characterize your attitude towards where we're going?
Well, that's a good question. I'm seriously optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely believe in the work we're doing. I absolutely believe in the work we're doing. My father was a Baptist minister.
Amen.
And before he passed, he said, churches should be restoring people. And I had the misconception that restoring people meant, oh, I backslidden for a while and now I'm coming back to church. And he said, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, we should be able to let people know that they are forgiven in the same way that Christ forgives us, and that they can go on with their life in a very positive manner and have great relationships. That was long before I ever discovered the Center for Conflict Resolution.
Okay.
And now I know exactly what he's saying. I have to be able to say to my neighbor, I'm sorry, I had a bad day. And if you will forgive me,
Mm-hmm.
I promise that won't happen again. Now, does that mean I won't do something else later? No, but it just means that thing won't happen again, and that we can continue to be neighbors. I will watch out for you. You will watch out for me. And where the children of my community are concerned, I'm going to watch out for you. Now, you may be upset because I'm going to tell you shouldn't do something that you're doing, but I'm going to tell you that because it's right, and I want to protect you from the things that are unseen in your young life.
Well, let me say that one of the things, if not the thing, that caused a 360 in Kansas City, Missouri, are the data from Omaha, Nebraska. And as you and I talk about conflict resolution, I immediately went to the school and some students who might have a beef with each other. But Karen Slaughter, on this date in 2023, we are dealing with some serious violence. We are dealing with some serious political divisions. We are dealing with some serious stuff. And not just as it relates to your optimism versus pessimism, but in terms of where we are in the United States of America. I'll tell you, DeQuay, and you've heard me say this before, but if somebody came to me in 1971 and they said, Mr. Boyd, Pookie is carrying a 38, somebody else would say, man, you lying, he ain't got no 38. He might have a 22. He might have a zip gun. Here's number two. This was a joke back in the day. I graduated from Chicago Teachers College in 1964. We played football on the Midway with some of the guys who were still in school. So, somebody graduates in 65 or 66. Oh man, where are you going to be teaching? He names a school. The joke was, you packing? Now, back in the day, that was a joke.
Yes.
An active shooter drill, who ever heard of something like that? Now we are in an America where a sizable population is suggesting that teachers carry weapons, so that while to some conflict resolution means getting school kids to play well together, but the depth of what you are dealing with includes just how much.
This is, as you say, a very different time. You have a 6-year-old shooting a teacher,
Come
right?
on.
You have students that can tell you, if I have $100, I can get any weapon I want to have.
Can you imagine?
And at the same time, you have those that say, well, the only way to combat somebody with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. And a good guy with a gun is a good guy until he turns bad.
Thank you.
Or until he decides differently he's
Thank
going to
you.
control the situation. I don't believe teachers should be invited to carry a weapon into a classroom. I don't believe that's their role. Their role is to educate those young minds and prepare them for the future. I think my role as a citizen is to vote in a way that ensures that they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that may include saying, Mr. Senator or Mr. Congressman, your desire to open up the rules on guns don't fit my desires, so I have to vote against you. You know, we are in a bad spot, very bad spot. Some of my colleagues talk to students who say, basically, they were in a shootout and their friend got killed, and they don't know what to do with their lives now. It's hard for them to say, I want to step away from this criminal life or this violent life, because where do I go?
Let me tell you the honor, Honor, the honor that you, Karen Slaughter, and I, Carl Boyd, have today. DeQuay Wilson and I met at a time when there were efforts to look at what was going on around us and in some way to help those who had been victimized by violence. And when I say honor, DeQuay, our co-host, announcer, engineer, lost her son to violence. And I don't know exactly how to pose the question to my colleague, DeQuay, who is the strongest person I know where this is, and the most consistent person I know. But what do you look to for agencies who purport to reduce violence or to help to satisfy? And what might you ask of something called the Center for Conflict Resolution as it relates to experiences with which you have dealt and efforts you have made?
Well, first and foremost, the agency that I relied most heavily upon was, of course, the Ad Hoc Group Against Crime.
Mm-hmm.
But there are so many agencies, there are so many organizations out here that are trying to do their part to combat the violence in the community. As far as the Centers for Conflict Resolution, I would just say continue what you're doing. Really.
Thank you.
As the program started, or as the conversation started with hurt people, and it's been said multiple times, I think the way to heal the community is to address those hurts. Sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult than others, because sometimes the hurts are so egregious that the hurting person may not want to fully expose it. So that does not allow them to get to the root, which somehow it hinders the healing process. But when you're persistent, when you're consistent, I can show you better than I can tell you anything. So when you're doing what you're doing, you're showing. And eventually, there should be a positive outcome. Maybe I'm just an idealist, but I think that as long as we continue to invest, we will see progress. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you. Please.
I have, first of all, want to say to you, thank you so much for sharing. One of the things we tell people is that we do need to look at what the trauma has been. And there's generational trauma. There are all forms of trauma. And sometimes we don't even know where it lies, you know? I know that I'm hurting, but I don't really understand why I'm hurting. I just know that I'm angry and that I want to strike out and strike back. And to get to what it is that's causing me this pain, we try to help people understand how to express their feelings. Because, you know, you talk to young people today, or you talk to people today, and you say, well, what's wrong? You know, I'm feeling some kind of way. We don't know what that means, right? So we want to help people be able to tap into what those words are. I'm feeling abandoned. Well, is that a feeling? You know? It's how we are able to get people to really dig deeply. We had a gentleman in one of our courses for Rethink who said that I just came from knocking out my cousin. And, you know, it's like, well, why? Because when I was a child, my mother would discipline me and point me in my forehead. And my cousin did that today. And that just triggered me. I never was able to hit my mother, but I hit my cousin, right? And he didn't even realize that that was a trigger for him. So it's helping people get to the basis of what it is that's causing their pain and figuring out ways to deal with it, you know? And we're not psychologists. We are not those people that are saying, you have to go in this direction. In fact, restorative justice isn't a compass. It's just kind of a map to figure out which directions to try and take yourself.
You know, I appreciate your saying we are not psychologists, because some of us ask you to be exactly that, or look at you as lay psychologists in terms of what you are asked to do.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you now to think about a question that I'm going to ask Louis George Walker to answer right quick, and then I'll come back to you to answer it in your way. Louis George Walker always helps those who join us to find out how to access KUAW.org, the kind of programming that is offered by this particular station that he founded. So he is certainly the person to answer this question. But Brother Walker, the reason I put it in this context for our very special guest, Karen Slaughter, is what I will be asking you is how those who need to communicate with you and how you get your word to enough people. Of course, it'll never be enough, but to people. Here we have a station. What does the Center for Conflict Resolution have? So let us first hear from Louis George Walker.
Well, you can always get in touch with us by going to KUAW.org or picking us up on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. You can also pick up our audio broadcast 24 hours a day on Get Me Radio, on My Radio Tuner, Online Radio Bot, and many more. Tune in. If you have a smart speaker like a Google or Amazon speaker, tell it to play KUAW, and we'll come up on that also. So we're just glad to be able to reach out. And you can call into this station, 816-599-6893. Join the program or after. We always check our recordings, and we will get back with you. Thank you for listening. And now back to Wave Your Grades.
Thank you so very, very much, Louis George Walker, 24/7. So if you dial up KUAW.org, you're going to hear some good music, some good information, good education. How do we dial up the Center for Conflict Resolution 24/7? So you already gave that contact information.
Yes.
Please do that again.
Our contact information includes being able to access us online at www.ccrkc.org or calling us at 816-461-8255.
Thank you so very, very, very much. And what we will do is prepare for the end of the program. Now, DeQuay Wilson, how should we do it? Should I give my closing No, I think I might have just answered my own question. I will ask our very special guest to make sure that we do not leave a stone unturned or give you the opportunity to say something that you want to make sure is said. Then we will go to DeQuay Wilson to announce the conclusion of the broadcast. Karen Slaughter, thanking you so very, very much. You spent the whole period of time. She has a very important engagement that she will be rushing off to. I cannot thank you enough for being with us.
I appreciate this.
Brother Walker indicated how you can call up the program later and have other people watch, but making sure that we don't leave something out that you wanted to make sure you said this day. Please, closing remarks from Karen Slaughter.
I would like to invite all the members of my community, your community, to go to our website, and there is a training that we offer free of charge called Neighborhood Accountability Board. It is an 8-hour training, but what it does is it prepares the citizens to take part in those sessions that I described earlier. So we all have something to give. We all have something to offer. And those individuals that have caused harm have an opportunity to learn from us how to correct that harm and how to move forward. So please take time to go to the website, and please consider taking the training. We offer it 4 times a year. We've already done it once this year.
Outstanding. Thank you so very, very much.
You're welcome.
Here's DeQuay Wilson.
Well, I would also like to thank our guest for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to have you. I want to remind our students that you can win a monetary award from our sponsoring organization, Students for Boots. Your essay will be titled, Heroes You Know You Did Not Know Were Heroes. Your content will identify a veteran at your school, can be any person, any adult rather, at your school. If your essay is chosen and submitted by an adult who gives you permission to read it on this Waive Your Grades program, you will be awarded a monetary prize. Please send your entry or your inquiry to stootsforboots@gmail.com. Again, that is stootsforboots@gmail.com. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today on your Stoots for Boots Waive Your Grade program, coming to you live every Saturday from the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center from 1 to 2 p.m. I am your announcer, DeQuay Wilson. Now, our host, Carl Boyd, will close with Carl's commentary on academic patriotism and his daily message for students in honor of our veterans from his book, Morning Messages.
Thank you so very, very much. Thank you, Karen Slaughter. Thank you, DeQuay Wilson. This commentary to serious American students is titled Carl's Commentary on Academic Patriotism for a reason. If you are a student who is serious about academics, you are, in fact, seriously patriotic. You may not be at the top of your class, but you can have as much class as those at the top. Being serious students means being determined to make your country a better place for all who live therein. You begin to make your nation better by making your community better. You make your community better when you make your school better. If before this day you were not quite sure about what to do to claim your patriotic place in our nation, just consider what we have learned from our very special guest, Clarence Slaughter, about resolving conflict. I say to you, American students, that you can unify our nation through education when you study together in peace so that learning will increase. We thank our Center for Conflict Resolution for this important contribution to academic patriotism among American students. And now, to students across the USA, your Stoots for Boots message for this day, March 11th. Students stand on the shoulders of our protectors as they protect the heads on our shoulders. Students stand on the shoulders of our protectors as they protect the heads on our shoulders. Thank you so very, very much, Karen Slaughter. Thank you, DeQuay Wilson, Lewis, Georgia, Walker. My name is Carl Boyd. This has been Wave Your Grades. Gracious God and wonderful Wanda, I'm on my way home.